welcome back to my channel. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Sian. Please subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. There's loads of different types on this channel. If you do subscribe, make sure you click on the bell to get a notification when I upload a video. Today I'm here to give you my what I read in September, and I only read 3 books this month and I feel like that was a bit disappointing. However, I am halfway through a book, so hopefully there'll be a few more in October. Let's keep our fingers crossed. So the first book I read this month is called The People at Number 9, and this is by Felicity Everett, and I was sent this to review by Mumsnet, so I haven't paid for this book. And this book is about a couple called Sarah and Neil, and a new couple move in next door to them called Gav and Lou. They're kind of glamorous, they've got exciting lives. He's an artist, she's a film producer. They move into kind of a semi-detached house and they do loads of work on the basement, but they don't really bother with the work on the rest of their house, and they kind of have their priorities possibly a little bit wrong. The book looks at a whole host of different topics. It basically covers friendship, marriage, work life, children, childcare, homeschooling, a whole host of things. If you're a parent, that's totally relatable because you have the same kind of struggles and the same kind of things that you have to work out, you know, just who's looking after the kids, what day, what's happening. So that's very relatable. There's also this kind of sexual tension from the very beginning between the two sets of neighbours, and it's quite interesting to see how that pans out. I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but it sort of really looks at the idea of kind of toxic friendships and how harmful friendships can be to you. At the end of every chapter, it left me wanting more, so it left me wanting to read the next chapter. So I think I read this in just a couple of days, basically. Felicity Everett builds the characters and the plot in a really interesting and dynamic way, and it really keeps you engaged, which is very nice, obviously, for a book, because you don't want to put it down. And I love it when you get a book like that you just simply don't want to put down. So I did really enjoy this book. The second book I read this month is Hagseed by Margaret Atwood. You'll have seen that I read a Margaret Atwood last month and absolutely loved it. And Hagseed was a little bit more difficult to kind of get into. I don't really know why. I think possibly it's kind of like a homage to Shakespeare, which is excellent, but it just makes it a bit more kind of technical, so it's a bit kind of more in depth and a bit harder to read. Maybe that's just saying something about me, but I just found it just took longer to read because it involved more thinking about everything, which is obviously a good thing, but equally it can be a bit of a frustrating thing because you just want to like read it. But that's possibly kind of very similar to reading Shakespeare, so I can kind of see why Margaret Atwood's done that. This follows the story of a man called Felix, who at the very start of the book is a director of a theatre company, and on the eve of his production of Twelfth Night, he is fired by a man named Tony, who then goes on to be very successful. And Felix has had a tough time in life. His wife died, his daughter died when she was very young, when she was 3, and he is consumed with grief. So when Felix loses his job, he kind of just retreats and almost becomes a hermit, living in this kind of hovel on the edge of town that literally has like the absolute basics. And he kind of always lives with this sort of apparition of his daughter who died as she's kind of growing up. So she grows up as he grows older. So for a while he lives in this hovel and kind of just is consumed by the grief and by sadness and doesn't really do much. Eventually he kind of realises he needs to do something with his life, so he gets a job in a local prison, and it's meant to be kind of an educational job, but he kind of turns it into like a theatre school in the prison. Basically they choose a different Shakespeare play each year to put on. The prisoners can change the scenes and they can kind of choose what happens, but they're also not allowed to swear in class unless it's in Shakespearean swear words. So they can kind of say, "Oh, I bite my thumb at you, sir," but they can't say your average swear words. And I really like that element of it. I really like the idea that that would happen. It gets to the point where Felix might be able to get revenge on Tony, because Tony's become kind of a governor and he is coming back to see the prison to see how well Felix's program is running. He doesn't know it's Felix who's running the program because Felix has taken on a different name for that role. So I'm not going to give you any spoilers as to whether or not he manages to kind of get his revenge, but I think it's a very interesting book. Margaret Atwood clearly really loves The Tempest because she takes it apart and she adds new bits, and at the very end of the book it just covers the whole story of the actual Tempest. It took me a long time to read, and it's not an easy read, it's a difficult read, and I think that is, like I said before, largely to do with the kind of Shakespearean element, because I don't know anyone who finds reading Shakespeare really easy, but I'm pretty sure there will be some of you out there that do. However, it is a very, very good book. It covers love, despair, grief, tragedy, power of forgiveness, and it really takes apart the whole of The Tempest and looks at each element of it. I think if you're a fan of Shakespeare, then this is an absolute must read. It's a very good read, it's very compelling, but it does take a bit of getting into. And the third book I read is called An Abundance of Katherines by John Green, and this is a really enjoyable, really kind of light-hearted read. It's a young adult fiction. It is about a guy called Colin who has only ever dated Katherines, hence the abundance of Katherines, and he is a very intelligent person. He was a very gifted child. He was kind of on like spelling bee contests and things like that, and he is trying to come up with a theorem of dumb peas, which is kind of, you know, basically a theory and a theorem that you can put onto every relationship to see if you will be a dumpy or a dumper, and to see how that relationship pans out, basically. So he decides to spend his summer on a road trip with his friend Hassan, and Hassan is an overweight guy who loves Judge Judy, and he doesn't like to leave his house. He doesn't want to get a job. He has absolutely no interest in further education. His dad is very rich, so he kind of just like, well, I don't have to work for my money, my dad has got money. And this kind of annoys Colin quite a lot, because Colin's definitely someone who works really hard. He works really hard at his intelligence. He's intelligent because he reads, because he really puts in like all the effort. He basically has a photographic memory, so he can remember pretty much everything he reads. So he comes out with these ridiculous statistics. He's an awkward guy. He's not someone who is kind of easy in social situations. He finds them quite hard, and I imagine that he would find dating quite hard, because it's sort of that emotional side which is quite hard to get across anyway. On their road trip they end up in one place, and the woman who lives there says to him, right, come on, look, you guys can work for me for the next 5 weeks. I'll pay you $500 a week and you can work for me. And they were like, okay, let's do that. And she has a daughter called Lindsay, and Lindsay is quite feisty, has a boyfriend who is like a jock, plays for the soccer team or American football, I'm not sure which. And her boyfriend's a bit of an idiot, but he's also called Colin, so they call him the other Colin. It's about kind of the friendship that develops between them all, and the group dynamic, and the fact that they're going out and working and earning money on this kind of road trip, and just about change, and about whether or not Colin can actually come up with his theorem, and whether or not his theorem actually works. It's a really enjoyable read. Again, it was like relatively hard to get into, I think possibly because of the theorem element, and this is possibly just because I studied economics at university, so seeing graphs that are like this kind of scare me a bit, but purely because they make me think I'm going to have to tell someone about like the market rate or something like that. That's my own little oddity, but I think it's part of my brain that just sees the graph and goes, oh, I don't want to read that. Obviously this is far more interesting than I found economics at university, so that got me through it, and it meant that I could actually read the book, and it was enjoyable, and I would recommend it. Don't forget, I'm uploading a video every single day of October, so come back tomorrow to see more. That's it. I hope you've liked this video. If you have, give us a thumbs up. If you would like to, then please subscribe, and I will see you again soon. Alright, bye.